Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Today we're here with Henry Ford, the founder of the Ford Motor Company.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Alright, so I was born in 1863 in Michigan, the heartland of the auto industry. And I created the Ford Motor Company in 1903, which is now one of the largest and most successful auto industries today.
Now, being inducted into the American Hall of Fame is something that all Americans take pride in and take very seriously. Why don't you tell us why you think you deserve to be inducted into the Hall?
Of course. So first off, I helped create and perfect the assembly line, which is a production invention that allowed for the mass production of goods and sent America into a consumerism frenzy. And in addition to that, I created the Ford Model T, which is a car that galvanized the American public and made every citizen want to own an automobile. And this invention of the Model T led to the exponential growth of suburbs in society. And it also led me to not only care for the money, but also my employees. As at the time, in the early 1900s, the lowest wage possible at my company to give an employee was $5 a day, which is the modern day equivalent to $120 a day. So these high wages were kind of like unheard of in my era, and it helped motivate my workers to work harder.
That is truly amazing. Now, going back to the wages which you offered your workers, that was one of the main inspirations for your idea of Fordism, correct?
Yes, that is. Fordism was a philosophy of mine that I created to both increase my profits and lives of my employees, and it combined the two of the most important contributions to society, high wages and mass production of inexpensive goods, and it helped my company perform as a well-oiled machine, you know.
Now, one last thing I would like to touch on before you go is the 40-hour work week which you established in your company.
Yes, so at the time there was not a lot of restrictions in the workplace, and so often workers in factories would work longer and more harsh hours, and so I instituted the 40-hour work week, which didn't overwork workers, but it also kept them on their feet and working. They were earning fair wages, and it just helped the company as a whole.
That is amazing. Thank you for coming with and meeting with us today, Mr. Ford.
My pleasure.
And based off this interview, it is obvious that you are qualified for the American Hall of Fame.
Thank you.
For the Hall of Fame, we chose Henry Ford because he created the Ford Model T, which revolutionized America and led to the development of suburbs and consumerism in the U.S. He created the Ford Motor Company, which would grow to become one of the biggest companies in the United States, and he helped create and perfect the assembly line production technique, which revolutionized the industry in the U.S. And he created Fordism, which was the mass production of inexpensive goods coupled with high wages for workers. Lastly, he put his workers first by developing the 40-hour work week, which was uncommon during this era, and offered his workers high wages during the time, about $5 a day, which would be equal to $120 in modern times, which is unheard of in this era.
Hello, we're here today with Julius Rosenberg, one of the first two Americans ever executed for espionage.
Yes, that's correct. Both me and my wife Ethel were executed by the U.S. government in the early 1950s on the charge of espionage.
So this action has you permanently inducted into the American Hall of Shame. Why do you feel you received such a harsh form of humiliation?
Well, when my wife Ethel and I leaked this information to the Soviets, they were really far behind in the nuclear race, and the U.S. was definitely the strongest power in the world in regards to nuclear weapons. So this allowed the Soviets to catch up and really led to the Cold War.
Yes, this is a very terrible thing to do. So backtracking just a little bit, what information exactly did you give to the Soviet Union?
My wife and I leaked information to the Soviets regarding the U.S.'s top secret radar, sonar, and propulsion engines.
And at this time, the United States was the only known country to have this information, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
So, why would you and your wife, both American citizens, leak this information to the Soviet Union?
Well, as my good friend Martin Sobel would eventually tell the world about 55 years after our execution, we weren't really loyal to the U.S. We were Russian spies the entire time.
And are you aware that this helped advance the Soviet Union significantly in the nuclear warfare race?
Yes, I personally believe that our information allowed them to further development of their nukes and start the Cold War.
Can you elaborate on that?
Well, before us, our information, the Soviet Union had little to no nukes in their armory, and the arms race was really one-sided. Like, the U.S. was way ahead. But our information allowed the Soviet Union to essentially equal out the playing field, which led to the standoff in the Cold War.
Well, there you have it, folks. Julius and Ethel Rosenberg, his wife, permanently inducted into the American Hall of Shame. So for our Hall of Shame induction, we chose Julius and Ethel Rosenberg because they're the first two American citizens ever executed under espionage, accused of selling the top U.S. secret plans to build a nuclear bomb to the Soviet Union, which helped advance the Soviet Union in the field of nuclear warfare, helped the Soviet Union begin to get into the Cold War with the United States, and they were accused of providing top secret radar, sonar, and jet propulsion engines to the Soviet Union.